Science finally confirms what happens when we die. Part 2. Visions, bright lights, and other phenomena.
Then you die. Now, the show's not over. It's over as far as you're concerned, but it's not as far as your relatives are concerned. Because many people who have a close relationship will then can make a visit. As you come up to death, you can actually put off your dying for a bit, because sometimes some of the deathbed visitors you have say, I'm going to come back on Tuesday, and you'll die then. So you can remember that you can negotiate with your relatives if you want to live a little bit longer. But when you actually die, if you have a drive, say, to go and see a daughter or a son who couldn't be there with you, then you can visit. And the visit is very specific. We've got a lot of these and we've analyzed them. If you receive the visit and you're awake, then it will be a feeling that somebody you know is dying, the feeling that they would like some help in some way, or you feel some catastrophe is occurring. And here's an example of one. A woman woke up. I think she was actually in a narrative dream, and she saw standing at the end of the bed her son, and her son was dripping wet. And her son came closer and closer to her, and as he came closer, he came into the light and became transfigured. He gave her a message, which many of them do, and said, "It's okay, please don't worry, I'm all right." And then the whole thing faded. Now, the interesting point is that she's in Australia and he's in England. And when she can, when the time zones adjust, she rings up and she finds that, in fact, he was drowned at that time in England. So that's deathbed vision. Now, there are other phenomena which happen around the time of death. And these are light in the room, blood out of the door.
Experienced by the relatives?
Only by the relatives. And we had one account of the person woke up at night, found the light shining into the room, thought she must have left the corridor light on, got up and saw it was streaming out of her aunt's bedroom. Her aunt was dying, went in. And when you go into this light, it's always got the spiritual quality to it. And she reported that. And she sat down quietly by her aunt, who slowly died. And as she died, the light faded. The light fading with death is very common. 35% of the nurses reported light in the rooms of the dying and in their conversations with the relatives. But it's a little bit more complex than that, because I've spoken to relatives where there's been a brother and a sister, and one of them will have seen it and the other one may not. So the next thing is shapes leaving the body. Again, really quite common. It can look like smoke arising, or it can have a definite form to it. And they're all variations on the theme. And it's very much how the Tibetan Book of the Dead describes these last phases of dying. So shapes leaving the body, quite common. Light and transformation. Then clocks stopping. Do clocks really stop? Well, the answer is yes. How do we know? Because people say their clocks stop at the time of death and show it. But do modern clocks, which are LEDs, do they stop? And we got one or two accounts, and this is a nice one. Somebody came up to tell the person who's died brother that he had died. When he went into his house, his brother came to the door and said, "There's no need for you to tell me, I know." And when I asked him how he knew, he said, "Look at the clocks." And they'd all stopped at the time of his death and were flashing his death time. The other thing is cats and animals howl at the time of death. That's quite common. Birds, fascinating. If you talk to people in hospices, they'll tell you quite often that birds appear on the windowsills of the people who are dying. I wish people would do simple experiments. You just need one camera, put it on the window of a person who's dying and compare that with the window of somebody who's not dying. I mean, they're so easy, such easy experiments to do, and it's either true or it's not true. There was a village in Massachusetts that described a guy who was fond of owls, and when he died, a white owl came and sat in the village tree, and well documented, and they don't have snowy owls there. And the owl stayed there until his funeral, and after his funeral it flew away. What does that mean? Don't know. What more cases?
Witnessed by others?
Witnessed by others, yeah. So these are all things that happen.